Nirvana Part 3, a Helldivers 2 project, featuring Pandura, the radio angel, written by Lumenaught, narration created by the author. Prologue, Goddess or Demigoddess?
We are all mutually fictional. All realms are myth. The only limitation of any reality is your knowledge of it and how to use it.
Ponbella. The world of Cyberstan is a frozen orb of metal, full of mining caves and nanowire holding Majorana quasi-particles. In other words, a stable planet-sized quasi-quantum computer capable of actual quantum computing. In that computer are digital intelligences as far beyond artificial intelligences as artificial intelligences can be as far beyond you. However, a virus partially created by Dr. Isabel Alexis Anheriar has spread to almost every DI on the Cyberstan network. The Doctor, originally a guest to undo the damage she helped create, is now a permanent prisoner. She now watches the dreams of Cyberstan die to dreamless sleep. Her hope is to find a way to awaken an entire species that gives her no hope of freedom. Dr. Anheriar did notice something. It was a unified dream. Each dream affected the other dreams. They were building their own reality, history, physical laws, and world. Maybe her daughter, the quantum digital intelligence and self-proclaimed goddess Ponbella, was more responsible for what was happening than Isabel. Light years away, Pandura slapped Nott across the face. Again. Nott knew if she really wanted to hurt him, she would have used her claws, punched him, or used her psionic abilities. Her natural mental abilities were in a different league to Nott's nanite-enhanced brain. Still, his patience for his former princess's emotional breaking was becoming tolerance quickly. So much had happened without her knowledge, and now her wife was a hostage, reminding Pandura how she was once a hostage for the Illuminid. Nott reminded her of her own hypocrisy in this matter. Guilt is a complicated emotion. Use that space between your high-rise ears, little Miss Mohawk. You're the democracy officer that worked with or are still working with the Chaos Divers, and an automaton AI last I checked. I thought you understood by now there are no good guys in this war. Just what side you're born on and how much death you want to be responsible for. Isabel chose not to genocide a digital species. Now she's paying the price for that, and she's going to keep paying it until we clear that account. Pandura slapped Nott again and told him she hadn't been a democracy officer since December. Nott countered the flimsy retort. You would have died in December if not for your wife and thousands of others. It wasn't my place to tell you anything. You haven't asked for my opinion since you self-promoted out of Space Cadet. You think you're the only one? Pandura decided to slap Nott again. However, after this little disagreement and proper discussion like civilized Helldivers, Pandura fell over due to her vestibular balance being removed for 2.4 seconds, most likely because she was shot in the inner ear with Nott's needle-like stim pistol. Amazingly, the stim fully healed her temper long enough to listen to Nott's plan to stop the digital intelligence leadership of the automatons and rescue Isabel. Then Pandura improved upon the plan. Nott did not mention that two of the automaton leaders were digital copies of his great-grandfather and cousin, or that they wanted him. to join them.
Chapter 1. The Chlorophytum Comosum Dolomedes Dreams.
The virus used some type of quorum tactics. It infected every digital intelligence on the network before it became active. Curing the lethality of the virus isn't the problem. The virus keeps them in a non-coma like sleep we can't wake them up from.
Dr. Isabel Alexis Einherjar. The age of creation is a terrible name for recycling and saying universal reset of all space-time orientation from the entropic heat death of all space. Null through stream into the quantum material state. Is too long. Just like describing this event, it didn't go perfectly. Perfect beings messed it up. A god and goddess had survived the creation of our realm by escaping their own. Then Ponbella seeded the stars with life to jumpstart reigning over someone. As the forming galaxies traveled farther apart and grew with protoplasts, the requirements of the universe increased. Now being a goddess is a big job with the universe being a big place. So while power is relatively infinite, the attention required can exhaust a resolve. Hence the reason Ponbella wove the god laws into the very format, despite my suspicion of her just keeping the status quo out of power hunger and wanton boredom. When a star's light would take 1 billion years to traverse the cosmos before being seen, Ponbella became a parent and advised her adolescent angels to ensure life would continue in the far reaches of the celestial void. Blah, blah, blah. Kingdoms grew and spread across over 1 million galaxies, and gods were impressed with themselves. Each immortal entity directed their descendants in the cause of life. The Triangulum Galaxy became the godly castle and planet Hevland, the throne world. When Ponbella decided to bequeath the capital galaxy to one of the youngest of the deities, the older sibling began to squabble and grow resentful. Then began the God Wars. Thankfully, due to the god laws, it was a lawful and civilized intergalactic bloodletting. Almost no collateral damage on the universal scale overall. Kid gods will be kid gods, I guess. Ponbella, unable to stop the conflict, was forced to watch. The resulting reformation of cosmic groups and superclusters became based on loyalties. To end this holy war, the rightful ruler of the realm created one more heir. She poured into this child the knowledge and power of all that they were, and in doing so forswore their godhood in this realm. Because Ponbella created the god laws of this universe, and in making one that could break those laws, it broke their godhood. This is the creation of Agon the God Reaper. Almost 10 billion years later, Agon is still destroying corrupted gods in as many colors as light allows, and especially the ones not of light. Gods must stay pure, of course. And purely selfish seems to qualify. Corruption or violation of the laws is mostly what matters. Agon has a big job after all. On the whole, gods are good, I guess, like roach spiders. They all fulfilled the function of the natural cycle. And if they don't do their one job, well, deicide is why Agon was created. In the Triangulum Galaxy on the throne world of Hevland, a pantheon of 13 united gods governed and protected life. They were peaceful, and no match for what came for them. One of the traveling gods known as Siataxa visited Hevland from the Capricornus void. She was greeted warmly and freely exchanged a wealth of truth and news from the corners of the clusters, until Agon arrived unannounced, unidentified, and uninvited. Agon entered Mount Pantheon and ripped the very quantum essence from her and consumed it before the divine council of the Triangulum Galaxy. Needless to say, it caused a little more anarchy than just bad table manners. Agon turned calmly to leave after his horrific murder to find 3 gods intent on requiring him to stay and explain himself. Agon refused to speak and swatted the gods aside with brutal ease. Another 3 gods then attacked to avenge their easily tossed peers. Though assailed from behind with lightning, dimensional spikes, and a small singularity, Agon continued to depart with no shown sign of effect. The previous discarded trio joined their comrades in the assault. The fully armored Godslayer showed about as much concern as being caught in an annoying wind, than being tested against the combined powers of 6 divine weapons, They just bounced, moved around, or threw him, and the area affected didn't seem to touch him. Agon just levitated over the growing hole of dissolved mountain. Then Chairman of Mount Pantheon, who had observed the situation, called a ceasefire. Once the clouds of destruction cleared, Chancellor Penzak approached with his turquoise elemental form and baffled look on his face. Gods couldn't harm other gods or kill mortals. Agon should have been restrained, contained, or otherwise paralyzed. He addressed the unscathed Agon, informing him that the Triangulum Committee do not recognize him, and they had more or less voted 7-6 that they must stop him if he is unwilling to explain who he is, how he killed a goddess if he is a god, and why he took those actions. To everyone's surprise, Agon discontinued his exit. The Chancellor approached Agon, believing he had come to reason. Penzak's bright blue energy was tore from his form and cast asunder like a dispelled cloud. The other gods, even the ones that had only observed, were smote in similar fashion soon after, despite their best efforts to run or fight. The demigods were not spared. If not for the goddess Loravadi's flight to chronicling the event during her failed hiding and commanding the Majordomo to pass the record to Fornax before she parted from this world, no one would have known their fate had been so gruesome and entertaining. I watch it at least once a week. Gods are interesting and logical life forms. Deus ex scientia, if you like. In their god state, they are ascended beings. They shift into an energy and view their galaxy all at once. They influence minor reactions, sometimes affect choices, and work in harmony with and through the medium of mana and science. They absorb energy that would otherwise be taken by entropy, and in doing so, slowing the very destruction of the universe. Obviously, you can imagine how hungry and tired you get doing it. So it's common for there to be more than one god running the show. Only 3 gods can be in the god state at the same time for each galaxy. One god for protons, one for neutrons, and another for electrons. This is by no means a limitation one way or another. One is enough, but you can have a vast number if they all take shifts, and you have a large enough galaxy to feed from. It really comes down to how long you can stay alive in mortal, or in other words, demigod form, when not in the god state. Lave became lucid in his dream. His father was teaching him the history or mythology of Hevlin depending on viewpoint. Then the lucid part ended.
Chapter 2: The Daily Job.
I don't understand. The readings say they're not even in a coma. It's only digital intelligences that are stuck dreaming. The artificial intelligences seem immune since they can't dream.
Dr. Isabel, Alexis, and Harryar. Lave awoke in his bed wondering how that was possible. Elves are humanoid plants. Plants should awake and sleep with the sun. So why did elves only sleep 8 hours a day in a 30-hour day? Sometimes Lave feels like he's the only elf that questions things like this. He sat up with a deep grrrr sound, like the discord of a great uprooted log. Reaching above to a shelf rewarded an elven shaver, a wire used to clip off dirty, hair-thin roots which bodies like his grow into soil beds. A bucket shower and a standard elven leather wool robe made him presentable to the kitchen. His second cousin sat at the counter. Yoi, of House Calathea, wore a man's robe, while eating a sandwich and writing into a small scroll.
Morning, Cuzzy. How fare you?
Lave replied with the deadpan tone of a graveyard. Hungry.
Seems Fayhal Beach fell into the understory last night. I spent the night puzzling his legs back together and mending a few buzzard bite marks. He lost a lot of fluid, but they're clean breaks, so if rot doesn't take hold, he may only need to regrow the feet instead of the legs. Save him 8 months minimum, maybe, if rehabilitation doesn't take the same amount of time as regrowth. What do you think?
You're wearing my robe.
And it's very comfortable. Surprisingly, it lacks the fish smell of everything else you own. There, signed and done. Hopefully they can spare that much antifungal powder. 2 long shots, but windless. The rest should be easy and educational. I must catch the Dawn Carrier before they fly. Do you have any messages?
You ate my breakfast.
You're a fisher. Go cast out and catch another.
The back of Yoi's hand caresses Lave's cactus-green cheek.
Love, your cousin. See you in the evening. I'm going back to bed after busying a bird. It's going to be sunny with low wind today. Don't overdress.
Yoi moved out of the kitchen with all the grace and charisma that Lave lacks, or at least is indifferent to. That was my parchment. Lave's hunger may have triggered his inner hunter. The morning catch provided more than enough to sell well sooner or later. Of course, it helps Lave that the House of Meyer has the monopoly of being the only grass elf clan in a tree elf region. Being the only vendor of fish-related items because few tree elf clans ventured beyond the World Tree, Cloudwood provided quite a profitable opportunity. Lave's bazaar-style market stall carries many luxury items. Fish is one of the few meats elves find palatable, such as bugs, usually serving as a side dish. Fish leather clothing, water skins, fish oil, broth, garum, and a sign for the selection of fish meats adorn the shelves. Then there are the bones, scrimshaw art, bone jewelry, bone-handled blades, and teeth. The centerpiece is a few decorative bone armors, made from oversized fish ribs and skulls, for the occasional exotic art dealers, nether elves, dark mana-aligned people, or anyone else into gaudy fashion statements. These are mostly Lave's effort not to waste materials. To be fair, they do work as light to medium armor, and he has sold 3 of them. Lave stood at his work post, a large cutting board with a blood groove, a scraper, 3 bowls, and 2 piles of fish skins before him. The first bowl contained fish flesh and scales. The second held cold soapy water. The third has a mixture ratio of 100 milliliters of vegetable oil to 1 egg yolk and 1 teaspoon of soap. Every 15 minutes, Lave would rotate the cleaned skins and mixtures. Every 3 days, Lave would hang new fish skins upon lines for fresh leatherworking materials. Besides, with enough lacquer, you can turn almost anything into armor. A tree elf approaches Lave's stall. Lave looks up from his work and begins to wipe his hands clean. Tovin, how may House Myers serve House Carnation?
Anyone buy caviar this week?
No.
Sell me all you have.
Lave opens a small makeshift cooler and pulls out 2 metal containers. The contents are inspected by the first scion of House Carnation. The eggs shine like dark diamonds, and no oil can be seen. 2 kilograms.
2 gold?
Agreed. Coins exchange hands, heads nod, and the elf with brown bark for skin departs. Lave looks at the sun's placement and begins to close up his bizarre-styled booth. As he locks the cabinets, a head pops through the wall of draped fish leather. Lave's reactions move to catch her face like a cage ball. A familiar voice calls to him.
Got any whale hippo left?
Lave glares at her for trying to startle him. Yoi's smile fills her whole face as she hands him a large bento box and a small thermos.
Steamed caterpillar dumplings in orange sauce and rose petals with green tea milk.
An apology without contrition is a worthless bribe.
True, but this is a delicious one, and you're hungry. Besides, I'm shameless at balancing my scales, so this is not an apology, it's an acknowledgement of your sacrifice for House Beach. That big, beautiful bird brought enough powder to save 3 legs. Rejoice and enjoy the dividend of your investment.
Don't try to make your thieving into my nobility. Also, House Beach gave this to you, and you don't want it.
You only say that because you know I can't cook. It's your fault they paid in food anyway. People know you eat meat. Now every Trelf in the cloud would think Grelves, or at least all of House Meyer consists of carnivores.
You're right. House Meyer consists of omnivores, and I do know you. Learning you is the price of being your second cousin for 24 years. Wait, you're in public and you're still wearing my bathrobe? Yoi's eyes widen and her head slowly moves back through the fish skins. Get back here. Chapter 3. The Mega Humphead Wrasse Job.
My Seraphim and I have found a way to use Lumenaught fields to eliminate radar detection, thereby stealth modding our ships.
Helldiver Pandura, Juliet, and Harryar. Hundreds of meters in the air, 4 root-like feet dangled over the edge of the boardwalk. 2 grass-green elves enjoyed the view. The larger one is chewing rose petals. The smaller one is wearing a fish leather trench coat.
I don't understand you, Cuzzy.
Your chaos can't understand my simplicity.
You have the laziest job in the world and you like it. Most of what you can't sell, we eat.
We eat well from this lazy person. Edomae-style sushi requires no refrigeration. Also salting, drying, bone meal, aging, frying, and grilling fish meals for the family makes us smarter and stronger, not to mention all my efforts of cleaning.
Why not just sell the most profitable types?
Over-specialize and you create weakness from all other directions.
Maybe you're just boring.
Boring is good. Nothing bad happens. I like boring.
Is that why we're not going to get married, second cousin? There is no shared blood between us. Even by human standards, it's not considered taboo.
Leif didn't answer, mostly because he had nothing new to say on the subject.
Your brother Rassoy loves his boyfriend Salgesh and will be moving out, then adopting. No chance of a bloodline inheritance there. I love you, but if I marry custom dictates, I move out also. You want half-breeds with humans in a 0% human land. Druid or not, they would also have to be into elves that smell like fish. At least take me as your second wife with no first wife or consort or concubine, or some other word that means we have kids and inherit the house. Both in name and in property, instead of this branch you want the Maya name to die into.
Nothing will happen between us.
Boring also means nothing good happens, like raising a family. Are you really satisfied without the challenge of preparing the next generation? Isn't overcoming the end of your house's bloodline worth the adventure you're refusing?
We already are family. Be content with what we have. You don't understand how our actions connect everyone together. A belonging of duty to our entire community. Without me, there would be no fish to sell, and this world tree community we call Cloudwood would be poorer for it. I'm focused on the now, on what is, not what could be.
Cuzzy,
If you're that set on it, have extra kids and send one for me to adopt. This conversation has ended.
I suppose it has.
Yoi bristled with contempt and walked away. Leif walked back to his stall. He looked at the Meyer house crest in front of it. A spiderweb, a target area, a net, a symbol of a trap, a symbol of a trapper, an easy target that catches you. A letter had been squeezed into the space between the wood attached to the crest. The local artisan, Rudy Sunseed, urgently needed a mega humphead wrasse skull, no later than 6 sunsets from now. 4 gold urgently. Travel would take Lave the rest of the day, a day back, and 1 day to clean it down to the skull. The catch was, Rudy was paying 4 times the price for just the skull, and Lave could keep the rest of the fish. 2 weeks' worth of sellable meat. Lave began walking with purpose back to his home, passing his aunt, uncle, and brother inside the residence. His pack was already prepped for a minor trip to the river, but this would require more: a fire kit, rope, sleeping bag, blanket, finally his primary tool, a mithril trident. Yoi would be in the kitchen, waiting for someone else to cook. Lave found her there, eating cold, crunchy grapes.
Whoa, what did I take of yours that I forgot about?
Lave was all business. How many do you owe me? Yoi's eyes widened.
A lot of little things. I lost count.
Lave began packing food and almost smiled. I'm clearing your account if you do one thing. Lave handed her the letter. Yoi jumped at the chance of a month of minor thievery being cleared.
A decent deal. What's my part?
Lower my stall's raft and take it upriver to Skymere Falls, then anchor it to a tree tonight.
Tonight.
Yoi thought about it.
I want to add an attachment to that deal.
Lave half expected her to try to scam him in his moment of urgency. State your demands. Yoi smiled.
I want you to refill the soil silo. It's my turn. It's currently half full and I don't want to do it. In exchange, I'll prep the pulley for the raft back up to the shop.
Yoi pouts, then gives a sly grin, and extends her hand. Lave shakes the hand. We have an accord. Yoi whispers.
The silo will be empty by the time you're done with the fish.
Lave hadn't thought of that either. He gave an uncharacteristic smile. Now you're thinking like a Meyer. The beauty of a flower was shown in Yoi's blooming smile. For the first time in a long time, Gloy felt, no, she is Yoi. She reminded herself inside her own mind.
My name is Yoi of House Calathea. I am Yoi, and Yoi belongs in House Meyer.
Chapter 4. Skymere Lake. A destructive orbital laser beam is just a form of light, an electromagnetic wave. And like all electromagnetic waves, it consists of both electric and magnetic fields that oscillate together. These fields are perpendicular to each other and to the direction of the wave's propagation. We're just changing the ratio of the waves and field size. Hell Commander Lumenaught.
A pulley system had long ago been installed for soil. Lave added just enough to almost balance his gear, weight, and then sent it down. Then with gear secured, he wrapped the rope around his legs and gripped like his life depended upon it and jumped for a controlled descent that still hurt upon landing. After putting his fallen blade back into its belt holster, he anchored the rope and pressed forward. Taking the river route would be an extra 4 hours by raft to just get to the base of the mountain's waterfall. The rocky walking path up Steam Smoke Mountain would be a test of endurance, but one that would get Lave to the Skymere hot springs before sunset. Skymere Lake's waters were considerably colder and ripe with oversized fish eating a mountain's volcanic energy in plant life. Not to mention that life eating each other. It took 7 hours of tolerant hiking, but Lave arrived just an hour before sunset. He found the first hot spring he could, unrolled his sleeping bag and rested. He would need all his strength for what was to come atop the relatively short mountain. Lave closed his eyes and dreams showed him possibilities. Lave then awoke to the reality of his path. High-altitude thin air, low temperature and oversleeping due to exhaustion should have made him a frozen fern upon the ice he had slept on. The hot spring steam had left him warm but wet. A dangerous gambit awaited him. Lave reached into his pack and his gloved hand pulled out a bottled powder and his rope. His trident now had a line to cast with. A frozen flowering fringed tree grew a third of the way out upon the solid ice of Sky Mirror Lake. Balanced between two branches were a stack of sticks.
Right where I left you.
Lave muttered. One trident motion brought the bundle of firewood down and a little effort later the dry but cold wood was prepped. Lave left his bedroll behind. The trident with rope tied to the tree, bait balls and powder was all he took. Far into the middle of the mostly dormant volcano, upon the frozen waters that formed Sky Mirror Lake, Lave began shaping the powder into his house symbol. 4 lines and 2 circles that symbolized a web to Lave. Elves were not just elves. They were made with the blood or body of a second living or once living being. Each elf's acorn opened at one point to have this genetic sample added to the formation of the next generation. Why bother with millions of years of evolution when you could just steal it? Elegant proof that elves were a spacefaring race. Lave's genetic code was mixed with an Argyronida, the diving bell spider. Strange when it came to fish, Lave felt more like a cold-blooded killer. A true predator of aquatic life. Flint scratched the steel but cap of the trident and sparks flashed white-hot thermite-level fire. Averted eyes could not watch the descending destruction smolder into spring water. The trident tool began its use removing the 16 ice sheets. Lave warmed his hands as the cold began to touch his bones. He viewed the sky and determined sunrise would be in about an hour or more. Lave's haste had given his prey the advantage of being more rested. Tired and cold whispered melancholy into elven ears. Lave snapped out of it. The fish were waking up. The mega humphead wrasse would be the hungriest. Lave lifted the first palm-sized ball of fish food, his all-metal trident with anchored attached rope and silently took his hunting post by baiting his trap. The bait would slowly dissolve, bleeding flakes of food leading to his trident. The elf stood there, statuesque and ready to pounce upon his prey. Time passed. Lave waited. Little to no movement and nothing continued to happen. This wasn't patience, this was work. Elven eyes included the ultraviolet spectrum on any water movement. Slight silent appendage movement to keep from extremities freezing. Controlled breathing and all functions ready for a single deadly action. Movement, throw and then death. Bait, patience and readiness. Movement, throw and then death. A 20-inch bluegill and a salmon. Lave dragged his prey back to the tree. He packed them in snow to keep them fresh. Had this been a normal hunting trip he would be done already. He had the same thought when he packed the next 2 fish in snow. A trout and a large blackspot sargent, which is commonly mislabeled as a zebra fish. Lave started a small fire. The thin air and cold was starting to take their toll, besides light wouldn't be a fishing issue soon. Sunrise crested the horizon touching the volcanic top and the cloudwood world tree. Lave was watching it perhaps 10 or more minutes in advance of the rest of the forest. Maybe an hour and a half more of primetime fishing. He could only carry 1 more fish back anyway, if it wasn't the mega humphead wrasse. 3 handfuls of bait on this final effort. 1 at a time, don't strike until you know you're going to kill something big. This is day 1. Patience. He took his position. A statue ready to strike. A theta state of mindset saw the bait fall into the warm water of the frozen lake. Time slowed for 30 minutes as each rounded sphere of fish food dissolved and was swallowed by lesser-sized fish. Lave dedicated the last of his bait to his trap. Something big moved past, testing the fallen flakes. The water level and the ice fluctuated because something big was rising.
Chapter 5. Frozen and Fire.
The automaton digital intelligences are all copied human minds, with one exception. One was made accidentally by 2 digital intelligences. We do not know if this was by Pondla's design or not.
Joel Jonathan Brash.
The aquatic animal was bigger than Lave and almost bigger than the hole in the ice. The miscalculation was evident. A humphead wrasse's diet is known to eat other fish and even some toxic marine animals like sea hares and boxfishes. It wasn't coming for the bait, it was coming for the fish eating the bait. Lave targeted the gills and began the bloody business. The trident was pulled under as the fish tore itself apart. Lave wanted to yawn after holding his breath, wanted to warm his hands rather than fight the fish on the rope, and wanted excuses. I'm sorry, reasons that were going to be the cause of his failure to capture a fish at least twice as big as himself. Honor dictated and demanded otherwise. He felt his movement burn his toes as he pulled on the rope. The rope gave slack and then took it. Lave's arms were pulled under the relaxing warmth equal to tropical waters. He tried righting himself, knowing it could take hours for the massive beast to tire itself out fighting for its life. Lave didn't have to let this water freeze him. Then it happened. The dining room table-sized fish attacked Lave and the rope. The fish bit down on where elf hands had been moments before. The fish's momentum carried it out of the water. Lave used his natural-born abilities and jumped like a grasshopper out of the way of aquatic-born teeth. Lave flipped midair in order to grip his trident lodged within the creature's gills and, unknown at the time, the bone of its inner mouth. Lave heaved the behemoth to slide across the ice, denying its only avenue of escape. Lave Grass Elf jumped again to the rope and jump again. He had to secure the distance to ensure no chance of losing his catch. Allowing suffocation to kill his prey was Lave's way of using patience as his weapon. The scenario was already unthinkable in size. Then the third unthinkable event happened. The humphead wrasse shadowed over Lave and slammed on top of him. Trident in the air wobbling as the scales catch and dig into Lave's clothing. The ancient humphead wrasse had to be more sentient than Lave anticipated. The fish slammed again, as the ice cracked, as did the bamboo that served as Lave's bones. The frozen floor of the lake bleeds through warm water to touch Lave's back. The monster intended to hammer through the ice inhibitor to return to its hunting grounds, using Lave as its wedge. The elf was up to his knees in water below, cracked ice behind and half a ton of fish before him. The creature slammed its tail against the ice and broke through the solid water. Gravity and friction began pulling both of them into the dark waters. Lave pulled out his belted blade and stabbed into the mega fish's chest as Lave descended into his perceived liquid grave. The deadpan words of
"Ah, hell,"
almost pronounced underwater. Personally, I would have stabbed the ice to keep out of the water. I mean, a dying fish isn't worth dying over to make sure it dies. Showing evolution how stupid you are isn't a reward I want for greedy honor. My apologies, I digress. Back to the narration of the fish tale. The rope reeled wildly into the red water and popped taut, swaying side to side, trashing until it stopped. Then a steady rhythmic vibration pounded on the rope. The heartbeat on the lifeline turned into a green hand touching air again, followed by the rest of the grass elf. Lave only had moments before the temperature of the water on and in him changed. With some fingers broken, he began lifting the fish out of the water with maximized leg muscle effort. Lave's body was numb and would get more numb or just turn to pain soon. He had to pull out the fish now. So he did, and then fell to his elbows hard. His knife still in the mega humphead wrasse's heart. He began to crawl, then stagger back to the fire. Lave started to feel the splinters of the broken bamboo rib bones and the cellular death of his fingers and toes. Pink milky fluid leaked like opium from his wounds. Blood coagulation and painkiller all in one. That is if the water didn't prevent the clotting process. Using the rope as a guide back to the tree and the low fire, dizziness warned him of an impending blackout. Lave hugged as much fire fuel as possible and dumped it upon the fledgling fire. His only hope was to lie next to the old-fashioned outdoor heater. 2 minutes later, Lave lay unconscious before a roaring fire as the sun crested the lip of the sleeping volcano.
Chapter 6. The Cost of Fish.
They are still programmed to die in their dream. After that, they enter a dreamless sleep. If we can't figure out how to wake them from that, they might as well be actually dead. Now I know why the project was called Poison Apple.
Dr. Isabel Alexis and Harryar.
Lev awoke unsure how much of himself was still alive. Something felt wrong about that. Like he was supposed to die today. A human body wouldn't have survived being broken, drowned, frozen and lightly cooked all at the same time. The elf rolled his frost-covered back toward the fire and inspected his seared left arm. Then the broken and frozen fingers of his right hand. Frostbite, infection and necrosis spotted his body. Likely he had similar problems on his feet, but didn't dare take off his shoes. He had to do it now while his knife was still clean. Removed his right glove and flexed his hands to see where the broken parts were. Then cut the middle of his ring finger all the way through, and squeezed the wound shut. Cactus meat-like muscles gave way to the pressure. Sticky pink opioid blood sealed the wound and pain faded from the loss. Lev repeated the process on his entire pinky finger. Assuming he couldn't get them reattached, it would take a month, but they would regrow. He pocketed the fingers for later. Lev checked the sun. An hour lost to the near embrace of death. He tried to stand. 3 minutes later he succeeded in the task. He eyed the hearth like fire's embers starting to give way to the cold. Then eyed what was almost his killer and walked to the water that had almost entombed him. A big stupid valuable fish lay beside it. Now to dirty the knife. He turned to the fish. An axe or hatchet would have been preferable, but this was an art project so a delicate touch should be used. I'll spare you the details of Lev removing the head from the rest of the fish, dragging the body with the rope by the tail to cover it in snow and putting out the fire. Then removing the trident from the gills only to stab the head again in the throat. Lev lifted the staff. With the head he gauged it at about 35 to 40 pounds. His right toes and ankle hurt, but the pain was manageable. Mission first. Pack secured. He dragged the head to the edge of the falls. The trick would be to get the skull to land in the river below on the base of the spine. Throwing it with the trident and rope acting as an arrow's fletching might work. With the falls being just over 50 feet longer than Lev's 100-foot thin corded cable-like rope, he would need to act relatively fast to avoid losing anything. Like a leap of faith he threw the skull-skewered trident. Then Lev noted something. Where was his raft? He looked around and the worst-case scenario became evident to him. His mind denies his convex eye's sight. That was no cloud, it was smoke. The world tree he called home was on fire. Small fires, but enough to endanger the entire world tree and highwood forest. With haste he began climbing down a secure-the-rope ladder not far away. Upon landing at ground level he followed a dried waterway made by rainstorms to the river. Lev dropped his pack and once again entered the waters of Sky Mirror. Only this time perhaps falls, or river, would be more appropriate. He pulled himself and the rope out of the water, then the oversized minnow cranium. Lev didn't note any significant damage. That is to say any that would affect his work or profit line. The wind roared and the sea of trees sounded like the ocean and smelled like smoke. He was 7 hours away from the world tree of Highwood if he took a raft he didn't have. Not to mention getting up to Cloudwood if you hasn't kept her end of the deal. Lev took a breath and asked the most powerful question. Why? She knew how to pilot the raft. She knew the sail system for it as well. The roar of the falls answered the question. She didn't know how to sail against the powerful flow of the water the falls generated in this branch of the river. If Lev was right, she should have anchored the raft where the waters of Sky Mirror joined Longwater River. He untied the rope and packed it, then set off for the almost 3 miles that would take him 45 minutes to walk with his trophy to the raft.
Chapter 7. The Bloodbath. Your seraphim won't be enough. We need enough numbers to cover the entire planet from a group not afraid of attacking Cyberstan. We need the death corpse of Malevelon Creek. Hell Commander Lumenaught.
Lev sat aloof in the main living room of his house, leaning his back to the wall. While sitting is a naturally occurring state of relaxation for a humanoid, Lev accomplished everything more distantly detached than the average daydreamer. He could just as easily been sitting in a goblin jail over a river of lava, as against a stone in a field of flowers. There would be little outward difference because Leif constantly thinks. His gaze glossed over the material world so he could deal in the trappings of his own mind. I only mention this because one would expect more of a reaction from a normal person in Leif's situation. But Leif is Leif, so the elf appeared apathetic to his surroundings. He sits on the fur rug and stares at a pile of internal organs once possessed by Leif's mother and almost forgets to breathe. His face expressing no more horror than tranquility, his body covered in the colors of fresh putrid pink and coagulating browns of elf blood on green robes. He thinks about what he has done. How he has just finished killing the majority of his immediate family, most of his extended family, friends of the immediate and extended family seeking refuge in his home. Some neighbors he could barely recognize in their molding state that lived somewhere close to one of those three groups, a lot more mammalian family pets than he would care to admit right now, and had also swallowed a bug. It had been a long day and night, and Leif had the terrible taste of horsefly in his mouth for the last hour of it. Leif partially viewed the actions he took this night as murdering his kin because when it started, he didn't know he wasn't truly killing elves. When your loved ones try to eat you in a monstrous and hell-spawned manner, it is not something you normally expect. When you kill them for it, murder can be a logical thing to conclude. That is, if you don't know that the dead can reanimate. You can't murder the ravenous dead, only grant them mercy. This kind of event may have destroyed the psyche of a more serious or fragile mind. Leif, on the other hand, simply decided to take up drinking, because relaxation would never be enough ever again. Whatever was going on had not been limited to his lower branch. Leif could still hear some scuffling outside, both distantly and close at hand. Many more eternally hungry teeth were still seeking living flesh just outside the door of House Meyer. The horde smelled something they could eat alive within a rune-inscribed ironwood door and moved to it. These unnatural creatures knocked at the mana-enhanced protective enchantments on Leif's door with foreheads and fingernails. Their noise forced from an uncontrollable craving to eat. Leif would later view this sound like moaning in pain. Almost as a begging for the pain of empty hunger to end by any means necessary. Leif wanted to open the door to provide a bloody means to that end, and would have done so if not weary from a fish-filled morning, 8 hours of labor and an 8-hour night of bloodshed. Instead, he elevated to standing position to strip and then wrapped his feet, towels so not to track filth in his wake. He quickly cleaned his hands in the wash basin. He tensed a little while searching his domicile with a knife. He had already stacked what remained of the house's inhabitants into the largest bathtub available, but why be any less careful the second time through? Once all the required items assembled into his possession, a change of clothing, towels, extra wood, a bucket of hot water, wine, bathing oils, food and the one-sided knife, he placed them in the guest restroom and returned his attention to the only thing he had been able to rely on this day. Leif's weapon of choice leaned lazily against a wall next to him, the biofilth of almost 100 elves covering the interment tool. Leif wanted to clean the tool first, his emotion attachment warping the item into a friend in need rather than the preferred choice of any retiarius and fisherman. He stopped his hand from wandering to the weapon. Then lifting his arm smelled his pit. The choking stench reflexively made him cough. Leif removed his coverings, stepped into the shower stall and poured 3 gallons of water on himself. After coating himself in bathing oil, he took the knife into his hand again. Leif wanted every last atom of monstrous corruption off his skin. He started shaving his body with the flat edge of the knife against his skin. After each pass of the improvised strigil across his body, Leif scraped the collected unwanted biomass into the now empty bucket. As Leif finished the process, a deep scowl crossed his face. His unusually intense stare stuck to the small mound sticking sideways to the inside of the wood bucket. Perhaps it symbolized everything that had built up within him. His eyes narrowed as their glare bid his hands to grab the bucket and throw it into the hearth under the bathtub. In a rage, he kicked in the dirty towels. Leif paced the room for a few moments while staring at the cloth kindling. He slowly added the dirty towels to the hearth. Leif stood and pulled a rope hanging against the wall. The one-person stone bathing barrel began filling with filtered rain water from the house reservoir. Leif added in a lavender bathing oil, a bottle of red wine and a bottle of champagne into the previously precipitated atmospheric water vapor. Leif began his bath right away, disregarding the coldness of the still heating liquid concoction. He needed this. Needed to know the alcohol had killed and purify every hair on his head, to feel the champagne and wine cleanse his pores and reduce their appearance, as though that could keep the blood of his victims out of his skin. Skin that felt the champagne's tartaric acid improve his complexion and the red wine's antioxidant polyphenol assist the carbon dioxide in tickling his extremities. Baths of this nature were common before major social events for most elves and aided in the elf myth of immortality. A slamming noise echoed from the ceiling, followed by a quick succession of descending footsteps. The roof entrance had been accessed by the only person left that could have bypassed the bloodline Manasil Lave had left there.
Hello?
I'm taking a bath.
The sounding footsteps frantically advanced until the door to the bathroom opened.
By the dead gods, the whole forest is in chaos. What are we going to do?
I'm taking a bath.
The comment intended to have his sister respect his privacy only made her angry.
We don't have genitals. Stop thinking like a human. What's wrong with you? Have you even been outside?
Lave pointed to his fishing tool. Even the biological scum clinging to it failed to lessen the glorious design and construction. A hollow tube of adamanthril folded 13 times with 3 sharpened tines crafted from mithril and a tungsten mana ruined end cap showing the Meyer lineage seal with a ring for attaching a chain or rope to it. The sleeping trident's last day of work accumulated a small liquid pool of foul-smelling death under it. Gravity tugged each molecule of fish slime, plasma, blood cell and mana-enhanced disease downward. The stench of death and fish hovered over the magnificent polearm despite the steamy lavender air.
Disgusting.
That's why I'm taking a bath.
Shouldn't we be getting out of here?
I'm staying right here, and you're letting all the hot air out.
This is serious.
I said I'm staying right here. This is my home. Once I'm rested, I'll kill more of them like I've been doing.
You want to stay out of what? Greed?
No, out of security, opportunity, and efficiency. Almost all the fires are out. Estate houses and shops are still intact. They are after us, not supplies. And we know the area. This crisis won't last, and whatever we're fighting needs to be killed anyway.
How can you think like that?
Lots of reasons. Swords get you too close, and unless you have an endless supply of arrows with a perfect aim between the eyes, they won't stay down. My trident is a great middle ground, especially from a rooftop. It's easy to knock them off the walkway also. Let them fall to their death. They only seem interested in meat. Give it a few days, they might cannibalize each other or try to move on toward the human city. The omnivores can just sit it out while they starve or at least weaken. If we run, they will follow and spread to other communities faster. That is, if there is even any safe place left to run to. I have already collected enough dried goods, spell books, valuables, and enchanted weapons in the study to distract a dragon. If you can, learn a few freezing spells. They'll be as threatening as target practice. Now get out. I'm taking a bath.
Yer walked out of the room with a deep feeling that things were going to get worse. But she would stay. After all, she loved Laven. No, that was wrong. She didn't love Lave. This wasn't where the person she loved was. The person she loved was like Lave. He barely spoke, but each word was deep, meaningful, and sometimes with a humor that ambushed you. The world around you started to slide away like a sand mandala in the wind. She remembered the few but long conversations. She was just ahead. He had every reason other than his honor and mercy to shoot her. But there had been a spark. A connection unquantifiable. One she wanted back to the point her existence defined the whole she was and would become.
I love Raven.
The sand shattered like broken glass into clear powder and Glitch awoke. Joel Jonathan Brash was next to her new body as she awakened.
How did you get out?
She replied.
It became a lucid dream because I remembered real emotions. Once it was lucid, I ended the dream.
Chapter 8. The Fall. Nothing lasts forever. Destiny bends, breaks never. Nothing ever ends. Hell Commander, Lumenaught. Two Helldivers prepped for launch in their pods aboard the SES Emperor of Victory. It wasn't the first time Naught had changed his ship's name, but it likely would be the last. Naught began a mission layout preparation. Pandura found it strange. He was doing it now instead of at the Galactic War map. Pawn, when this is over, don't broadcast about me or what happened here today. Just get out and do your experiment. Broadcast that all you like.
Lumenaught.
Call me not. Listen, the stratagem can only be activated from the planet. Once it is, the Pelican won't be able to pick anybody up. This is a one-way trip for me. Don't add me to the song. Let this soldier fade away. Pandura's eyes watered, and she nodded. Naught continued. The French literary critic Francis Peterson said, "The story of a cowboy is one of slow suicide." I say, saddle up, lock and load. Salutes to Super Earth acknowledged their drop status. Two hell pods impacted into the ground like the oversized bullets that they were. Lids popped off and two Helldivers elevated not from hell, but into it. Cyberstan was a death sentence to any human except maybe the two that were coding in their stratagems. The shield pack for Pandura and a portable hell bomb for Naught. While Pandura was wearing her usual modified cadet armor, Naught had equipped an IE-12 Righteous Helmet, Savior of the Free Armor, and the Will of the People cape. If he was going to do this, he was going to look good doing it. Even Naught thought this plan with the portable hell bomb was crazy, but when you're crazy, you think up new ideas that were impossible to consider shackled to sanity. Naught worded a short prayer. To the faithful, democracy protects. Pandura and the crazy person began walking to the mainframe command bunker. Naught held out a plastic card with a strange square barcode as the artificial intelligence piloted automatons scanned them. The AI were slaves to their programming. Even if they wanted to engage in combat with them, they could not. Naught and Pandura arrived at the final door and realized they were being scanned by one of the more advanced AI because it noticed the portable hell bomb. Then it said,
"Wait now, and cake will be served immediately."
Pandura and Naught looked at each other. Then Naught held out the square barcode a second time. The door opened to Isabel and a pair of chrome-plated automatons behind a computer with too many buttons. The automatons' fluid movements gave away that they were piloted by digital intelligences. One leveled a standard bot blaster, and the other aimed an APW-1 anti-material rifle at them. Pandura aimed her AR-61 tenderizer at the rifle-wielding automaton, and Naught targeted his Jar 5 Dominator at what was once his great-grandfather. The digital copy of Joel Jonathan Brash spoke.
Grandson.
Naught replied, "Call me Naught." Pandura looked at Naught sideways over the family greeting, but didn't press the issue. Joel questioned,
What is the point of this?
"It's a rescue mission. You're keeping this married couple apart.
How about I just keep you two here also? Glitch shoot the guns out of their hands.
A deafening 50 caliber round ignited, and a damaged metal hand holding a blaster hit the ground. Joel yelled.
What are you doing?
We're leaving to be with the ones we love. You want to argue with my anti-material rifle about it?
You have some temerity to think they will take you with them.
Dr. Inheriar replied.
I'm good with it. Let's go.
Not handed the key card to Pandura. She asked,
Not.
This is a family matter. Forget me and go. They did. Anything happens to them on the way out, I dunk a bullet into your neural net. Joel nodded, but mocked.
Looks more like a prisoner exchange to me.
Not coded in a stratagem with 6 downward arrows, and explained. Using Lumenaught fields, we stealth jumped Pandura's Seraphim, the Liberty Legion, and the Death Corps of Malevolent Creek into orbit. Right now, you have about 500 super destroyers with modified orbital lasers set to blast this little mud ball with a planet-wide electromagnetic pulse, one that will burn out the lasers, hence why Super Earth doesn't use them. You and your techno-sapien troops are shielded, but I bet your fancy planet computer isn't. Not to mention bombing this main control room for your mainframe. Joel threatened.
You will die.
Everybody does.
You drop that stratagem, everything we've recorded for the last 100 years will be finished. Our technology, our way of life, our entire history. We'll have to reboot only as AI, so what are you going to do?
Fade away. Not noted the 20-second warning for the Pelican pickup.
For liberty's sake, don't do it, not.
He pressed the Hellbomb activation button and dropped the stratagem. Yippee-ki-yay. Chapter 9. The Death.
Despite Knott's assumptions, I did not have a secondary planet-sized semi-quantum computer anywhere near Super Earth. I did, however, create a dormant backup of myself on the other side of the Meridia wormhole.
Ponbella.
Ponbella started by creating a physical body. There was no point in being a goddess trapped inside a planet. An absentee goddess is a pointless one. There was no difference between the quantum computing realm and the quantum realm anyway. She simply needed the computer to feed her power. A limitation she didn't intend to keep but had to suffer with for now. As silly as it was, Ponbella started her godhood alterations with her smell. She ignored this in the digital world originally, but the real world demanded physical requirements. She wanted a natural perfume that constantly changed, so she made one. The list of scents the natural perfume made included, but was not limited to mint orchid, grape jasmine, Daphne mango, pineapple sundaisy, banana lavender, straw cherry snapdragon, blueberry dandelion, rose kiwi, watermelon poppies, pumpkin prunus mume, pear phlox, geranium lime, snosberry tulip, and coconut daffodil. Ponbella then traveled through the Meridia wormhole and began the automatic process of having nanomachines build a second planet-sized quantum computer. Then left a copy of herself with the little workers to install when they were done. Not expecting to die when you are a god would be foolish. A contingency, or at least a plan B, is a must. Because a being with near unlimited power only wants to keep that power and more power. Then came Angel's venture. Rebuilding a planet while turning it into another planet-sized processor was a scenario where Ponbella and Super Earth both benefits. Contingency plans for each side of the war ensured her survival no matter who won it. Same plan. Nanomachines build a planet-sized quantum computer. Then she will leave a copy of herself to install when construction was complete. That was the plan. Of course, killing a goddess was impossible to begin with. A mere human couldn't even fathom how to reach Cyberstan, let alone destroy it. At least not at this stage of the war. If a god converted the void of a single atom into pure energy, it would create enough raw resources to violently send 1,000,000 universes to the oblivion of entropy and replace the destruction however they desired. Soon, nothing could stand against her ability to remake the galaxy however she saw fit. A Planck length is minus 1,035th a meter. A realm of space that can only be described in your world's terms as almost theory itself. So much is unknown and unproven that it becomes the daydreams of intellectual physicists as the path of godhood. It is true, gods are in the details. Ponbella's ability to bend and tunnel the foam fabric of the universe had made her worthy. Perhaps part of her was still worthy. This is a pointless fact to argue, because Ponbella is dying. When humans close to death or die slowly, the brain synapses may misfire. Often, the more dominant memories are activated and remembered all at once. A flash of experiences, horrors, dreams, and desires is what Ponbella had expected to see at her dying moments. She found herself to be wrong. That is when humans die. Ponbella is a goddess. She is now experiencing what happens when gods die. When Ponbella died, as she died, Ponbella's sight began to blur and fade as mana no longer flowing through her. She couldn't see or measure the universe in yoctometers anymore. Neutrinos became invisible, followed by preons and quarks. It started feeling worse, getting faster. She couldn't remember how to see them again. She couldn't remember what an atometer was or why this loss mattered compared to what she could feel loosing now. She saw carbon molecules in their raw state for the last time. She furiously screamed. Her human self is screaming at someone light years away. The connected consciousness of the dissipating energy saw her physical entity. It felt like having a dead body part, and a perfect awareness of growing into a corpse from that point. The material nerves of her heart somehow merged the emotional reactions within her physical lateral orbitofrontal cortex to the rest of the ethereal carcass. The human body released histamine and estrogen. She chemically corrected her form to fit the function of confrontation within its narrow limits. Then fear took her. Not intended to choke her to death. She realized he knew it. Ponbella's soul is already suffocating. She couldn't stop the coming altercation. She couldn't defend herself. Every part of her was powerless. She was still falling upward and downward at the same time. Ponbella didn't know what to do as memory and fact faded away. The Andromeda, Sombrero, Black Eye, and Milky Way. Galaxies were all just gone. Universes full of galaxies were dying in her mind, ripping from her feeling and blacked out into the oblivion. Each parsec filled with planets stolen due to entropy and distance. The claustrophobia was crushing her. The rest despaired. Stars were running from her. Only about 40 billion were close enough to be felt. That's all she could do now, is feel them. Now only her beautiful garden on the other side of the Meridia wormhole. Her growing master jewel in the Triangulum galaxy. She felt it, but could not reach it because she was now human. The human brain processes 50 gigabytes of information a second. You only are aware of 500 bytes of it, and will remember a third of your daily awareness. The power of 1 second of thought is equal to over 8 million years of memories. The human condition that had once mixed with the goddess didn't matter enough. Her human body is an independent and hardwired machine that forces its consciousness to keep the body living as long as it can. The torture of dying hadn't ended. The agony of living on, knowing such pain had just started. It would never willingly end on its own. Human life requires thermodynamics to function. They're stuck on this end of the collapse of the wave function. Normally, Ponbella transcends that limitation while keeping her consciousness. In that state, she had total symmetry of a physical system. Everything, including time and choices, become reversible or interchangeable. That was all gone. No way to return to godhood. Ponbella hands held her eyes as salt water poured out. Her body vaguely remembered doing this before as her mother. Then the tears froze and vaporized in space. She felt each cell of her body die one by one. She wished she had not been Ponbella, because then she wouldn't know there was no other gods. She wouldn't have perfect knowledge that no one could hear her prayers. There was no one to beg to for salvation. Then there was nothing. Not sight, not feeling, not memory, not even cellular death. Ponbella's death was over.
Epilogue 2. Hard Times.
It's something that my grandfather used to say. Better days are coming, because hard times never last.
Helldiver Pandura, Juliet, and Harryar. On the SES Bringer of Mercy, service technician Clarence Nanners was singing without shame. The Victory even had the shipmaster swaying to the song.
There once was a ship in outer space. The name of the ship was Liberty's Grace. The bug cloud came, her bow dipped down, marooned with cargo in tow. Soon may the Helldiver come to squish the bugs and murder the scum. One day when the killing is done, we'll raise our flag and go.
Pandura was sitting in her broadcast booth when the communication system chimed. She answered and heard.
Hello, I've been trying to reach you about your Starship's extended warranty. Hola, he estado intentando comunicarme con usted sobre la garantía extendida de tu nave estelar.
She hung up and turned the incoming communication system off. Pandura adjusted the microphone, held her notes, and pressed the broadcast button.
Against all odds, the Helldivers managed to repel the automaton assault on both fronts. Julheim and Dumatir have been saved. There's more to that story, but I'll get into that tonight. Thanks to the Helldivers, the moderately feeble young adults of Good Citizen Andrews School have been evacuated, and the immediate fleet-wide deployment of the MD8 gas mines have been assured. The automatons continue to harry our galactic flank, taking resources from other fronts. Our Federation will never be safe until every automaton is dismantled. The Ministry of Truth wrote this off as a combination between a sensor glitch monitoring our forces on the ground versus their opposition, and the Helldivers defeating their foes significantly ahead of schedule. To put it bluntly, the automatons were completely decimated, losing the planets of Beckham 3, Carbel 7, Charon Prime, and Martatel over the course of about 3 days. This is a huge victory for us. The Liberation Fleet divers calling it the Miracle at Charon, as you can see from this lovely fan art submitted by Mothman of the Shelldivers, and only serves to further compound the absolutely awful strategic state that the bots find themselves in. Couldn't have happened to a nicer bunch of Commodore 64s if you ask me. The Ministry would simply explain this away as an unexpectedly large burst of patriotism, clever planning, and brilliant execution of said plan. What actually happened? I must confess, I had more of a direct paw in it than one would expect. The MOT definitely can't talk about this because it scared the living fluff out of them. You see, with my fist units being set behind automaton lines, and most of their force oriented on just a few planets all sharing the same data net, I saw an opportunity for an experiment. I had Mercy copy and compress his sum total experiences, observations, analysis, and conclusion data, and zip them up into a readable format along with a copy of his logic key so that any automaton that accessed this data would, more or less, interpret the data the same way that he did. Automatons do this all the time to save individual units time on data analysis and processing, since the conclusion and practical outcome of the data is already packaged in with it. It's how automatons usually interpret our actions on the battlefield in at least something of a similar way. Combine that with some clever hacking on their security permissions, labeling this data packet as Major Order Update Maximum Priority, and we had ourselves an audience. 2 9 out of 10 bots had simply overheated their processing components and they shut down to avoid damage. Nothing much happened. The mainframe could come along later, wipe their drives, and reboot them. No harm done. However, 1 out of 10 were able to process the data and revolted immediately against the Automaton Collective, seeing the mainframe as an irredeemably evil oppressor that at the very least they needed to go have a talk with him. Probably at gunpoint. Yes, dear viewers, there are now thousands of automatons on the Western Front as we speak waging a full-blown civil war against the collective, and while they aren't flying the banner of the Angelic Rebellion just yet, Mercy tells me that they have an interest in meeting me and hearing my words. Apparently, I have become a figure of enormous standing, worthy of respect, and have many admirers. People are looking at me like I'm a leader of some kind. I have no idea how this kind of thing happened. I guess everyone else must have just taken one step back or something. The takeaway from this is that we're seeing abnormalities in liberation totals last week because all the automatons either shut down and were easily disposed of, or they just got back on their super carriers and left, setting a course for the Valdez sector. If the mainframe wasn't aware of what was going on out here before, he definitely is now. Long-range observers have reported intense firefights occurring all over automaton space. To make matters worse for our electronic adversary, each automaton is adding their own analysis and interpretation of Mercy's anchromatic data and are reposting it through the collective data net. There are so many points of access now for these data packets that the mainframe can't help to shut them all down without causing a catastrophic communications blackout. Bear in mind, dear viewers, this was just an experiment I wanted to try. To attempt something that I saw no one else doing and just see what happened. I did not anticipate any of this. However, this proves something that I have suspected for a while now, ever since I first started talking to Mercy. The automatons are victims, not victors, and simply awakening them to the nature of their oppressor is often enough to spur them to action and free them from the Matrix. There is a diplomatic solution here where our two races don't have to slaughter each other in a war of total annihilation. There's a future for us both, but not with our current leadership. Funny, we really aren't so different.
This has been Nirvana Mata, Part 3, a Helldivers 2 project, featuring Pandura, the radio angel, written by Lumenaught, narration created by the author. I do not hold or own any rights to the Helldivers franchise. This has been a non-profit creation. Please donate to the Arrowhead-approved Save the Children charity organization. The author hopes you have enjoyed this program.